Welcome back to Live with AI Virtual CES 2022, a webcast series featuring exclusive interviews with industry experts and thought leaders on the topics of ADAS and autonomy, along with virtual presentations and demonstrations of AEye's CES Innovation Award-winning Foresight LiDAR, a solid-state and software-centric solution that adapts and optimizes its scan pattern in real time. All of the broadcasts today and tomorrow are appearing live across all of AEye's social media channels, which includes Facebook and Twitter, as well as LinkedIn and YouTube. You can follow us there in order to get notified of the broadcast tomorrow and then to rewatch any of the broadcasts from earlier today. And then each interview will be archived at a later date. So everything you're seeing on AEye's social media today and tomorrow, all of that will be archived at a later date on AutoVision News. We did have some technical difficulties today. Maybe we'll blame it on the snow that's happening right now in Detroit outside, but you know how it is when you work from home. You sometimes have to restart your computer and boot it back up and let it do its thing. That was the case here. So Dr. Gunnar Jurgens, Continental Head of Product Line LiDAR, ADAS, and Autonomous Mobility and Safety, we are scheduled with him tomorrow at 11:30 Pacific. That's 2:30 Eastern, and he'll talk about ADAS in automotive and trucking and all of the advancements that we're seeing there. So we'll look for Dr. Jurgens tomorrow, again, 11:30 Pacific, 2:30 Eastern time. As far as the closing remarks and the key takeaways today, and there were a lot, but there were two of them for me that stuck out. So I want to take just a few minutes and just share these with you. So the two key takeaways were technology and people. Technology and people. And let me explain what I mean by each of those. So when it comes to technology, we've spent a lot of time today talking about adaptive LiDAR and specifically AEye's Foresight platform and what that means and how that works. And in my interview with Jordan, we talked about the AEye shadow van. If you are on LinkedIn, if you follow AutoVision News, we actually have a video up there of the AEye shadow van. We're showing that demonstration again tomorrow as part of our programming. But the shadow van came to the Detroit area a couple of months ago. I was able to actually get a ride in the shadow van. So for months I had been, reading about AEye's technology, had been writing about it, had been reporting on all of their advancements, the fact that the company went public. So I had heard of the technology. I mean, I knew what the technology was. I knew it. I could explain it very well. But I had never seen it. I had never sat in person in the shadow van up until just very, very recently. So when you see the technology like that in real time, you look at all the product specs and you look at the description of the technology, and then when you see it in action, it opens up. It opened up my world, and it makes it a huge difference. So, with regard to one of the key takeaways today, when it comes to technology, I want to focus. I'll focus on three words, and I'll look at it from a customer perspective, from an everyday car owner perspective, and those three words are that makes sense. So when you look at AEye's technology and you sit in the shadow van or you see the demonstration as part of our broadcast, when you understand that it can go to a scene and it can focus on the most important things, as Jordan was saying in our interview, if I have a pedestrian in front of me, if I'm in a school zone, naturally as a driver, I'm going to zero in on that pedestrian. I'm going to pay attention to the pedestrians, to the kids in front of me in a school zone, in a place like that. I don't care about the clouds in the sky. I don't care about the trees. I'm concerned about the pedestrians ahead of me. When you can explain that, when you can conceptualize that to people, especially to everyday car buyers, I do think there's a light that goes on where they say, that makes sense. And I have seen this before in automotive myself. I started in automotive retail. That is where the bulk of my experience is, and in experiential marketing. But back in 2011, so over a decade ago now, Ford made I was working at a dealership called Sioux Falls Ford. So I was a Ford salesman early in my career. In 2011, Ford made a switch to the Ecoboost engines. So, which now the Ecoboost engines are commonplace in the Ford lineup. They're in a lot of their vehicles. But back then, the Ecoboost engine was very rare. It was only in a couple of Ford vehicles and a couple of Lincoln vehicles. The trucks, the Ford trucks at the time, always had the 5.4 V8 or they had the 6.2 V8. So everybody was conditioned to thinking that a truck had to have a V8, that in order to tow, that in order to be a workhorse, it had to have a V8. So the idea of a twin turbo V6 was just ludicrous. And I mentioned Sioux Falls Ford, so that's Sioux Falls, South Dakota. That's right in the intersection there of Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota. So you're talking a lot of farmers and ranchers. This is a demographic that uses their trucks specifically for work. So they have V8 engines in every work truck that they have. So the idea of a twin turbo V6 to them didn't make sense. How could an engine smaller than that? How could it have more torque? How could it tow more? How could it have more payload? And as sales consultants at the dealership for a while, we faced an uphill battle, particularly because Ram and GM still had V8 offerings, as did Toyota. It wasn't until we got out on the road and we actually did a demo drive and our customers actually got to drive that truck that they actually started to believe in the technology. Then we explained the twin turbocharging of the EcoBoost. We explained, how it was designed and the specs that Ford had. And eventually they said, wow, okay, that makes sense. It is possible to have a different type of technology that offers more performance. And that's what AEye's LiDAR is. It's a different type of technology. It's a unique technology that offers more performance in the long run. Similarly, later in my career, I spent a long time on Chevy's national truck team. It's an experiential marketing program. We toured the country, NASCAR races, IndyCar races, state fairs, hunting and fishing expos, anywhere you could put a Chevy truck, that is where we were. And with the new Duramax diesel trucks, there was a feature that was introduced while I was on that team called the diesel exhaust brake. And what a diesel exhaust brake is in the Duramax engine is that it uses the variable vanes of the turbo to create back pressure in the engine to slow the truck down when you're towing. Now, this is a novel idea, but it's not a standalone feature. So the diesel exhaust brake complements on these Chevy pickups, the integrated trailer brakes, and something called FNC, ferritic nitrocarbonizing, which is a really neat technology. I encourage you in your own time to read about that, to watch vehicles, but it's a surface treatment that's done at the factory to extend the brake rotor life by reducing corrosion and reducing heat on the brakes and ultimately increasing durability and just, again, making the rotors last longer. But the point is that now the braking system was a complete system. So while the ferritic nitrocarbonizing on the rotors, the surface treatment was great, the integrated trailer brakes in the truck, they were great. The diesel exhaust brake was a new feature and it was great. The point is that in order to maximize trailering performance, particularly going down a hill when all of that weight is pushing on you, all of these individual features were working together to accomplish the same goal. No feature was more important than the other. No feature was getting the headlines all of these features were working together. And that's very similar to AEye's technology, very similar to adaptive LiDAR. It can work together with everything in the vehicle to enhance the entire experience, particularly the safety. And when I would be out and I would be talking to consumers about Chevy trucks and the braking system that our engineers at Chevrolet had designed, they would say, yes, that makes sense. It makes sense that you would have a diesel exhaust brake integrated as part of these other braking systems. Yes, that makes sense. So in a very similar way, with the technology that AEye has, with this adaptive LiDAR that we've been talking about, if you can show consumers that it's part of this larger picture that enhances overall vehicle performance, then I do think people will eventually say, yes, that technology makes sense. And last but certainly not least, when it comes to this, we're talking proven technologies here. So obviously, AEye's adaptive LiDAR in automotive, that's a very easy topic to talk about. But what we have learned today and what we're going to see tomorrow is that This technology, AEye's Foresight LiDAR, it's used in rail, it's used in ITS, logistics, trucking, and industrial. It's inspired by aerospace and defense technology. And when you explain it at the very base level, just that it works like our human visual cortex, it sees like we see, then I think a lot of people can say, wow, that can work for my car too. Because if it's working for trains and it's working for heavy trucks and it's working for industrial, then yes, that makes sense that it would work for my car too. It's a proven technology elsewhere. Therefore, it should be a proven technology for me. And in my experience working in automotive, anything that comes from the aerospace and defense background automatically has built-in credibility with consumers. So that is one of the most exciting things with the technology, is just to see how everything will progress with AEye's Foresight LiDAR. Second key takeaway is the people, right? And to summarize Art Blanchford, who former Veoneer executive who we talked to earlier today, we can build cars, but we need to build people. And when we build great people, they will in turn engineer, design, and manufacture great cars. And so I go back to one of the earliest lessons that I learned from my mentors at Sioux Falls Ford when I started in 2009, when I was fresh in the car business. And the very first thing my mentors there taught me was that the car business is not the car business. In fact, it's the people business. And if it's one thing that has stuck with me all of these years in automotive, and like Art was saying, if it's one thing that sticks with you, it's that idea of the people. It's not the car business, it's not the automotive business, it is the people business. In all the work I've done in automotive, that rings true. In my work with Automoblog and AutoVision News, which is where I spend most of my time today, that still continues to be true with everybody that I work with. So once we seek to understand people, whether that's customers, whether that's partners, whether that's employees, we will then understand cars. And I think that Art Blanchford really got to the heart of that today. The second key takeaway here with people is asking, where are the women? So where are the women in these industries, particularly automotive? Where are the women when we look at career fields that we may think that are typically male driven? Where are the women? And so this was something that Pam Simon touched on today. She's the conference chair and executive vice president of content for Manifest. And I had actually mentioned a study, an Automotive News and Deloitte study. So I want to read a portion of that now. So this basically shows that, as Pam was saying, we still have a lot of work to do when it comes to advocating for women in the industry. So here's from Automotive News and Deloitte from this study here. This was taken in October of 2018. Women account for only 27% of the U.S. auto manufacturing workforce. In a survey conducted by both organizations, Automotive News and Deloitte, in October of 2018, called Women at the Wheel, just 1% said that automotive was the top industry for females. Most believe that other professions, from education to financial services and healthcare, are better at recruiting and retaining female employees. The hurdle is so high that just 14% of women in the Automotive News and Deloitte survey say that they would encourage their female family members and friends to pursue an automotive career. Beyond that, 79% of respondents say there is a wage gap that still exists between the genders in automotive, while 74% of female respondents revealed there are different standards of performance for men versus women. So one of the things that, one of the key takeaways from Pam Simon was, how do we change this? How do we change this tide? We're making progress, but there is still more work to be done. And this is a special topic because women in autonomy, the founding members of Women in Autonomy, are also key decision makers at AEye as well. So there's a natural synergy here. But what Pam had talked about was that as business owners, as executives, as decision makers, we should look to promote from within. We should look at our workforce. We should look at our talent pool, and we should ask, where are the women? And then on the opposite side of that, Pam gave some advice for younger females who are maybe in college, maybe in high school. They're looking at a career in tech. They're looking at a career in automotive or trucking and logistics. And what Pam was saying is that just go for it. Uh, don't be held back. Follow your dreams. And to paraphrase Pam here, she said that many times in her career, she has been the only woman in the room. And while that can be intimidating, that has also helped her. That has also helped her prosper into the career that she has today. So, two very, very important key takeaways there: technology and people. And speaking of people, back at the AI Command Center, a few special thank yous that I want to give: Aaliyah Charney, Jennifer Deitch, and Ami Rollins. So they have been just instrumental behind the scenes, organizing everything that you are seeing today and tomorrow. And then our producers, Alex Hartman and Kiasa Jeter, who have been running the controls. This broadcaster is grateful for each and every one of you. And for those watching, thank you for joining us today. This webcast series, again, is airing across all of AEye's social media channels, which includes Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You can follow us there and get notified of each of the webcasts that are coming up tomorrow. And then you can rewatch anything that you liked today or that you didn't have a chance to view earlier. And then each interview, everything you're seeing, will be archived at a later date on AutoVision News. We're going to pick back up tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Pacific and 11 a.m. Eastern. Again, follow us on social media to get notified of those broadcasts. On behalf of AEye and AutoVision News, I'm Carl Anthony in Detroit. This is Live with AEye Virtual CES 2022.